All right, so UFC 302 is in the books. We are here immediately after the card to break it down. What happened? What's next? The breakdown, let's go. So like I said, UFC 302 in the books. I'm actually watching the press conference as I'm doing this video for you guys. We're going to talk about two fights. The two fights that stuck out the most to me, Sean Strickland, Paulo Costa, and the main event, Islam Makhachev, Dustin Poirier. Two amazing fights. First off, the co-main, Sean Strickland, Paulo Costa. I thought the fight went about the way you would assume this fight would go. Sean Strickland eating up a lot of space, using his teep kicks. It felt like he threw 300 teep kicks to the stomach, the push kicks. And they're effective, man. It controls distance, allows him to land significant strikes, and it keeps people from walking forward on him, which is one of the things you want to do when you fight Sean Strickland is push him back. Don't allow him to eat up a lot of the cage. And he walked Paulo Costa around and around and around that octagon. I thought Paulo Costa started the fight well. He had some low kicks that got to Strickland early, and it really messed up his leg and had him turn in southpaw. Just, again, you saw from Paulo Costa, honestly, what Sean Strickland said he does. He goes, he backs up, he'll explode, and, you know, throw some punches or throw something offensively, and then he'll continue backing up. And that was, for the most part, what the fight looked like. Even though Paulo Costa was scoring, he was throwing some shots, he was going to the body with his jab, he was looking upstairs with the left hook. I think the left hook could have been a lot more successful had he set it up with some combination punching. And again, I'm just a dude sitting in a chair. I'll freely acknowledge that for you guys. I'm not a fighter, I'm not an expert in this. That's clear by my predictions, but it just looked like he needed more. And when you fight Sean Strickland, you need more than one punch at a time, one kick at a time, one strike at a time. Otherwise, Sean Strickland's going to eat you alive with volume and pace and pressure, and he did all three in this fight. Sean Strickland won, I thought, 4 of the 5 rounds, but you could argue that some of these rounds were close. What you can't argue, in my opinion, was at the end of the fight when the scorecards were read. And again, I thought Paulo Costa had a great fight. I thought in moments he looked great. He landed a left hook on Strickland and kind of stunned him for a second. The low kicks were working to a degree, but he just couldn't put it all together. He just never was able to flip that switch and stay forward pressure, stay on the offensive side. Strickland just continued to answer the call. And speaking of calls, one of the things, like I said, you can't excuse is a 49-46 judging scorecard to Paulo Costa in this fight. I don't understand that. That would mean that Paulo Costa won 4 out of the 5 rounds, and there's just no way that happened. There's no argument for it. You can say that Paulo Costa won 1 round. You could say he even won 2 rounds. But to say Paulo Costa won not just 4 rounds, the first 4 rounds, and lost the 5th. I thought the 5th round is where he did a lot of great work. It just doesn't make a lot of sense at all. And again, we can sit here and do the thing about MMA judging. It's not going to change, especially not when you have commissions for a sport that's still somewhat relatively young, that we still base the point system off of boxing and we try to translate it to MMA. Everything's very ambiguous again, and what's a significant strike? What is pressure? What is damage? All these things are a little bit up in the air, but it was pretty clear to me that Sean Strickland won this fight, and he won it going away. It wasn't the most interesting fight in the world, and some people even called it a snooze fest. Sean Strickland himself said it was a boring fight, but I thought it was good enough, and I thought it was enough of a stamp for Sean Strickland to get his shot at the rematch with Dricus du Plessis and get it done, man. I thought he deserved the rematch to begin with. I think it was a company man move. Fair play to Sean Strickland to go and fight Costa in the first place. The number 1 ranked guy fighting the number 7th ranked guy is something you'll rarely see, when Strickland could have easily sat out and gotten a title shot. And I think that stuff needs to be rewarded. He went through the fire. He won this fight, and now I think he deserves a shot at the title. Then we get to the main event. In this fight, this was a great fight, and not because it was a particularly close fight. It wasn't. And yes, let me start by saying I was wrong, because people in my comment section get their jollies off by being right in fight predictions when we are here to appreciate the fight. We're here to watch, to let our imaginations run wild. At least in my case, that's what I do. If you want to throw on the glasses and be the MMA expert, you can do that. Here, we're the casual concept, where all the things that we do are in enjoyment of what could be, and I could give less of a about being right or wrong about predictions. But what I do like is the fight itself, man, because the nerves, the moment, the anxiety, the pressure, the build, all culminating in this main event for the 155 belt. Dustin Poirier, for all intents and purposes, on his last legs, no pun intended, but this was it. This was the last shot he was going to get. And Islam Makhachev looking to not only cement his legacy, but add to it by taking one of the best and biggest names in the lightweight division down and putting him down for good. Unironically, what I thought would actually happen in the fight, I thought, and we can go back to the video that I posted last week and you guys can see it, 90% of what I say in that video actually happens. 10% is what happens to end the fight where Islam actually wins. I told you guys that I thought Islam would win the majority of the early round. Matter of fact, I said he would win the first 3 rounds going away, and that Dustin would KO him in the 4th. And that part I absolutely got wrong. But I also told you that this was going to be a survive and advance strategy for Dustin Poirier. That's what it was. Islam wins the first round by essentially 10-8ing Dustin, and it wasn't just with the grappling. While that was a lot of it, it wasn't all of it. Dustin got clipped in that first exchange, got a left hand upside his dome piece, and got backed into the fence, where we all know the Dagestani wrestlers are going to be successful in taking your ass down. And that's what happened. Dustin did a great job of surviving, didn't take the risks that I thought he would, and thank goodness he didn't there, because it would have been bad. It would have been probably over quickly. He survives, get back to the corner, and round 2, you started to see Dustin have a little more success. He was stuffing some takedowns, again, in the open part of the octagon, where the takedowns aren't assured by pushing you into the fence. Those takedowns become less and less successful for that style of wrestling. Habib, Islam, it's a tough thing for them to do, to get you down there if you can defend a single leg, and Dustin did that very well. But the problem was, and this is what makes Islam Makhachev so great, his wrestling is his base. It is where he can fall back to. It can be his primary, it can be his secondary, and in that round, he chose it as a secondary. He was boxing and striking with Dustin. And again, Dustin was having moments, right? He'd land a jab, or he'd land an outside kick, or he'd land a right hand, or something. But for the most part, I'll give the credit where it's due. Islam Makhachev, maybe because of the threat of wrestling, or maybe because he's just getting better as a striker, was able to not only hold his own in the striking department, but outstrike Dustin in those moments. Even with just the boxing, he was double jabbing, he was left hand, and he was counter pull left hand. He had all those weapons in the tank, and he was letting them out. I thought he won that round pretty easily going away as well. Round 3 was, again, a little bit more of the same. Dustin, again, though, was trying to turn the tide, and this is where I thought it may happen. If Dustin was able to survive this round and get into that round 4 and make Islam wrestle and make him expend effort and make him do things that were going to, in the latter part of the fight, be detrimental to his striking game and make him not wrestle as much, this was the moment to do it. And Dustin started to build momentum in the 3rd, but it just wasn't enough. Every question Dustin presented, Islam had an answer for, whether it was the striking battles, whether it was the clinch work, the tie clinch and the knees up the middle, or it was the grappling exchanges where Dustin was wrestling his ass off. His defensive wrestling has gotten so much better, and I was so impressed with him getting out of single legs in the open. But I'm giving a lot of credence to Dustin surviving, to him being defensive, and sometimes you can get lost in that when the reality was Islam was also winning that round as well. Like, he was winning these rounds going away, but you, as a fan, at least me, I was rooting for Dustin to survive and make something magical happen. But it shows Islam's greatness that everyone wanted to see that. We all knew that was really maybe the only shot, and he still couldn't do it to him. So at the end of round 3, they go to round 4, and this is where I thought Dustin really had his best opportunity. He landed a flush left hand on Islam in this round and actually wobbled him a bit. I almost jumped out of my seat. I was so excited, but it was just, there were moments here where Dustin was able to really start to put together some things, and he was trying to turn the tide. But again, every time he'd present that question, Islam had an answer, whether it was, again, the offensive grappling to just stop an exchange, or maybe some shots in the exchanges to back Dustin up a little bit. There was unfortunately a part where I think this was the 4th round, maybe it was the 3rd, Dustin got headbutted, broke his nose, and then a knee to the head right after he got headbutted fucked him up as well. That was a big deal, and Dustin, he said his nose was shattered, and it looked like it. Like, this part of his middle nose was over here on his eye. It was pretty rough. But again, in the 4th round, Dustin, is surviving, and at the end of the round, he's once again caught in a grappling situation where he's surviving, and he's survive and advance, and we get to the 5th round, and yeah, it's probably 4-0 Islam. It could have been 3-1 if you really wanted to give Dustin the 4th round, but regardless, it was a dominating performance from Islam as far as round by round, not really being in much danger outside of one big punch from Dustin Poirier. But in your mind, at least again in mind, you still had 5 more minutes for Dustin to make life fair. And this is not to say that Dustin didn't expose weaknesses in Islam. In the 4th round, he catches him with a nasty elbow and cuts him on the bridge of the eye, or I think maybe on the forehead. He made the champ bleed. He proved he was human. He wasn't a machine, but that just wasn't enough because, like a machine, Islam wasn't flustered by it. It didn't bother him to see his own blood. And it wasn't in any way, shape, or form deterring him from the mission, which was to finish Dustin Poirier. And that's what happened in round 5. And listen, whether you're an Islam fan or not, whether you want to say, oh, you know, we don't like the wrestling's too boring, whatever, you have to appreciate in this 5th round what Islam showed in his grappling ability. You know, you talk about generational grappling, and I think of Khabib Nurmagomedov, obviously, but I also think of Islam Makhachev. And maybe he's not as good a grappler as Khabib is or was, but as an overall fighter, he's starting to make a case that the skills he possesses and the ways he can control a fight or turn a fight, even when maybe a fight shouldn't be that close, even when he's getting yelled at in the corner by Khabib to wrestle, don't strike with Dustin, don't get cocky, don't, you know, be prideful. He's able to hold his own against some of the best strikers in the world, some of the best grapplers in the world. His overall package, no pun intended, no dig, is just more complete. Does that make him a better fighter than Khabib? I don't know. Because Khabib was such a great specialist, who knows? But once again, in that 5th round, there was a shot from Islam. I think there was a couple of them, and Dustin had defended well. You could think maybe this was the moment that he could really start to capitalize. He had gone a long stretch without being taken down at this point. He was defending, and shout out to him and Gamrot working on that stuff to try to prepare him. But there was a moment where Islam got him, had a single leg, and he was deep on the single leg this time. And Dustin had done a good job of like turning and dead legging his lead leg and trying to rip it out. This time, he switched legs on Islam to try to get his foot out. Islam took the other leg, and Dustin was going to try to do that dead leg and you know, dead fish. But this time, Islam held on to the ankle. Dustin waited for a bit, and in your mind, you're like, don't punch him. He's going to use that as an opportunity to take you down. And sure enough, Dustin winded up to punch. And Islam did, I don't even know what it was. It was like I don't want to call it an ankle pick because that's not necessarily what it was, but he had the ankle, rips it down almost like the Dagestani handcuff thing that you've seen them do in the gym, but to the leg of Dustin Poirier, ripped him down, got on top of him, and that was expert level enough for me to go, holy shit, this guy is otherworldly. But on top of that, he dives in on the guillotine, doesn't necessarily get it, but doesn't necessarily look. He's doing it to transition and make Dustin defend the guillotine, get his hands close, shrimp his body. Islam immediately switches the grip, sneaks the hand under, Darce choke, and that is immediately it. Islam taps Dustin Poirier in the 5th and final round. And I gotta say, it was a fantastic performance. It was amazing to watch Dustin fight like he did, heart of a lion, but for Islam to ultimately do what he said and show the level that he's at, which is at this moment number 1 or 2 pound for pound. And I know that John Jones is still somewhat active, you know, and you could say he's right up there still because of what he's been able to do, but Islam's activity with him, you know, defending in his division, pound for pound conversation usually means you need to jump divisions to be there. So I don't know that I can say he's number 1 just yet, but I do think that if he goes to 70 and he wins a belt there, we're going to have a real hard conversation about where he stands pound for pound, not just right now, but all time. Once again, an amazing night. By the way, I didn't mention this. Kevin Holland broke a guy's arm, so that was amazing as well. Great night. What an amazing card. And I will be back here with you guys just a couple of days from now because Conor McGregor and Michael Chandler have their first press conference for their fight, UFC 303, coming up this month. It's gonna be wild. We're gonna have a fun stream for it. I will see you guys then, but that's all I have for UFC 302. It's in the books. What did you guys think about the card? Big thank you to Dustin Poirier for the memories, for the fights, for the moments. And no matter what you do, no matter where you come from, no matter who your parents were, their degree or their job or your situation, on any given day, in the fight game it rings more true, but in life it is the same. We all should strive to make life fair, even if it's not. Dustin made it out of nowhere. Thank you to Dustin Poirier. Appreciate you guys. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. UFC 302. It's over. What happens next for everyone involved? I don't have those answers, but I guess we'll find out.